Hi, everybody. This is Frank Gladstone from asifa-hollywood, and today we're talking to the filmmakers from Trolls World Tour. So I'm going to introduce everybody a little bit, and they'll wait and raise their hand, say hello. So we'll just start and I'll just go clockwise. So the director, Walt Dorn, there he is.
Hey guys.
And underneath the producer, Gina Shay.
Hi.
And then slipping over to Tim Heitz, who's head of story.
Hey, everybody.
And David Smith, who still owes me $20, is the co-director. And Kendall Cronkhite, who is the production designer. So I just happen to know that Gina was raised by wombats in South Carolina. She doesn't talk about it much, but it's true. And Kendall is related to a famous newsman. Let's see, who could that be? Chet Huntley or David Brinkley, I think it was. Walter Cronkite. Tim is related to nobody. And Walt has a lot of alter egos, and that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to ask a few questions. Those of you who've done these before know I'll ask a couple of questions, and then we're going to go to some questions that were submitted by you during the last day or so, and with some pretty good questions. So the first one is, Walt, you're more than one voice in this show.
Yeah.
I think I have a list here, I think somewhere. I think it's over here. Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, here it is. Pages stuck together.
Yeah.
It is Cloud Guy, Death Metal, Mr. Dinkles.
Yeah. Shared.
Fuzzbert, Smidge, and King Peppy.
Yes. Yeah.
So you did a lot of recording, and David directed you.
He did. When I got behind the mic, Dave would give me words of encouragement. You know, when we're making the movie, Dave and I do tons of the voices, and some friends of ours there on the production. Before we bother any of the voice talent, we do many, many versions of the film, just kind of roughing in the voices. So I'm lucky enough a lot of times, and it has in the past, where some of these things stick. You know, Dave has some voices in there as well. So I always feel honored where the voice sticks.
Well, that's pretty good. Now, Dave, since you had to direct him, were you as tough on him as he's as tougher on all the other guys I talked to? I talked to Anna, I talked to Justin, I talked to them about. I called them all ahead of time because they're all personal friends of mine, and they said that Walt was really tough on them. Yeah. So did you give back when you directed him?
Well, here's the real deal, that Walt is actually an incredibly kind and supportive director when he directs the superstars. And I probably am harder on him because Walt and I have known each other for so long as friends that I can go, come on, now try it like you're getting paid. So,
you actually did say that. I think that was one of your directions. It works.
Did you have to
so I am harder on Walt, but only because Walt knows that we're such good friends.
Right. Yeah. Walt, did you have to sign up for the Screen Actors Guild and stuff like that?
Yeah, I am. I am a SAG member. I'm a proud member of SAG. I joined long ago when I did the voice of Rumpelstiltskin for Shrek 4.
Right.
That was like 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Yeah.
I remember the guy who did Pinocchio had to get the.
My friend Cody Cameron.
Cody had to get it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Now I'm going to ask a question of Kendall next, because to say that the production design of this show is subtle, and the designs are downplayed, is wrong. And I know you've done both of them, right, Kendall? Now you've done both.
Both movies, yeah.
Now, you come from a rarefied atmosphere of illustration and deep, subtle stuff. How did you channel into this thing?
Well, it's definitely a film after my own heart. I think, the great thing about Walt and Dave and Gina is that they just took the reins off and let me go, which is slightly dangerous. And that's what you get.
So really, this was like playtime. Well, it's never playtime, but it was like playtime for you then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on both movies, I always say that there wasn't a crazy, bizarre thing that I could suggest that these guys would just go, no, we're never doing that. They said the opposite every time, and even said go even further, and so that's what happened. And I think in the second film, because there was so much diversity of music and worlds, that, you know, from the first one to the second one, it just got amped up even further. You know, there were like, what, 6 to 8 different worlds that even more when you think of all the in-between parts, like the river and everything that connected all the worlds. There was just ample opportunity to go nuts with it.
Which is a good, now, speaking of ample opportunity to go nuts with it, and calling no stops were, you know, against the rules. Tim, your story, is that, and that it sounds to me, or at least when I watched it, it seemed to me that story had the same directive. Just go for it.
Oh, totally. I mean, from top to bottom, it's always, how far can we push it? How can we make it crazier and funnier and more troll specific? You know, I think one of the things we're always trying to look for is just how to take the story structure that we're given and then make it trollsy, you know? Like, there's such a great tone to these movies that Walt and Dave and Gina and previously on the first one, Mike, they created this world that has such a great specificity to the tone, and to find ways wherever we can to push that and make it weird and wacky and humorous, I think, is one of the great challenges of working on these movies.
Well, then I have a question here, because as I'm watching the film, there was the troll calming effect, where you massage their eyeballs and then they calm down. Whose idea was that?
That was one of the story artists, I believe it was John Magrum, came up with that gag. And yeah, it was just an immediate keeper.
Well, I'd like to buy some of that.
Yeah.
And I think that would help in this time when we're all at home, if we could all get a little bottle of that rather than hydrochloroquine or whatever that is. I think that would work really great.
I will say I do wear contact lenses, and every once in a while I'll put them in and I'll just give my eyeballs a good rub, and it does the trick.
So I'm gonna go to Gina now, because I'm gonna ask a slightly more serious question. There's I'm watching the picture, and I'm dancing around and, you know, all of that. And then I suddenly realized there's a little bit of a Rashomon effect in it. And I don't know if you guys, meaning that more than one world had different views of what had happened.
Yeah.
You know, the pop world had that view that you get, which, by the way, when they unscrolled it at the beginning, I thought immediately of a Torah being of that persuasion.
Yeah, it's based on that.
Well, you know, when you're talking about history, there's so many different points of view and how people experienced it in different ways. And, you know, kind of revisionist history comes into play. And in the Trolls world, we were telling the Trolls version of their experience with how music was threaded into their lives. And there were differing points of view. So, you know, pop had kind of a squeaky clean kind of point of view of their own history, and it wasn't right. And all the other tribes felt like the story was not being told as it had happened. Right. So, you know, Poppy goes on this journey, and she discovers that when she gets to funk, it's a big revelation for her to realize that the history she was told by her father was not the way things went down.
Yeah, and I thought that was, you know, surprising. I mean, it's a great fun thing, and everybody's dancing, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But to suddenly the diversity message came through right away. But then to see this thing where the different cultures had these different views, which is probably a pretty good lesson for right now for a lot of things that are going on, even in our country. So I was surprised. I know that you weren't thinking about how that might reflect on what we are in now, but it does. It's pretty interesting to me anyway. So,
yeah, I mean, when we go and we decide to embark on a film, right, for 4 years, I've done this with Walt a few times now, and Kendall, and Tim and Dave now too. Dave goes all the way back to Shrek with us too. So it feels like when we embark on these films, they have to be meaningful to stay engaged for 4 years.
Right.
And we need to find a value in it.
So that you've all been working together on these films. And I know that eventually when you do that, you can sometimes start filling in each other's sentences.
Like we can read each other's minds pretty much. Yeah.
See, this eyebrow means this, means that. I remember Chuck Jones used to say that they did, working on the old Looney Tunes years ago, saying, pretty soon you didn't have to just say the first couple of words. Okay, I got it. Well, that's pretty good. I'm going to move to some of the questions that some of the people, it's always more important to me to find out what other people are thinking than myself. So I'm going to do some, and I may say the names of some of the ones. I know that Robert Gold actually was the other guy besides me who actually brought up the idea of the Torah. I thought that was pretty interesting. And then the map comes from that, and then everybody has their other viewpoints of what they're doing. The villain of the piece thinks that they're doing the right thing. And it was pretty great. So another one from Robert. I'm wondering how and I got this also from Dallas Garcia. I'm wondering how you handled the animated effects such as water and sand that Cooper was eating. What were the rules of that? Dallas also said that some of the stuff looked almost like stop frame. So.
Yeah, go ahead, Kendall.
You want me to answer that?
Sure.
Yeah. So, the first movie was based in fiber art. So the world was basically felted for the most part, except for Bergentown, which was more realistic. And so when we went into the second one, we based it on fiber art. So each world has a different kind of fiber point of view. And also we started using glitter a lot in the first one as a point of reference for explosions and a lot of different things. And so we carried that into the second movie too. So it became the sand, and the water is actually based on organza fabric, which has a kind of transparent, kind of prismatic quality to the fabric. And so we did tests with yarn, flowing and different things earlier, but we felt like this was a quiet, lazy river kind of quality that worked really well. And so that got incorporated. And so the effects guys used all this. They shot reference of fabrics and had it play and decided like how they were going to interpret it. So it was kind of a mix between real water and organza, and the same with the sand in the desert. It's kind of got this Pucci designed fabric hills covered in glitter. That's what I mean. It's like we take an idea and then you just go as far as you can with it. And on every level in every department, including effects, they just completely embraced it. I mean, we used glitter in the lava explosions.
Yeah, I think the overall effect we really want was to make it feel like it was handmade. I think in the digital world we live in, which is fantastic, and we create this stuff digitally, but we wanted to emulate a handmade feel to the film, which makes it more human and thereby kind of more connective, I think, to the audience.
And, it was almost, on some of those effects, it almost looked like on purpose, the effects guys didn't blur stuff so that it looked like it was stop frame kind of look to it.
Yeah.
We took out the motion blur in most cases.
Yeah.
They did that in Spider-Man, and we talked about that a lot too. So we wanted to do that again, making it feel like stop motion, again, making it feel like it was handmade.
Right. Well, and then there are sequences in it that are or appear to be stop motion with the almost puppet looking stuff in the storytelling.
Penny Whistle.
Yeah.
Penny Whistle
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, where we really stepped her out, to make it look like stop motion. We're
Right.
such big stop motion fans. We're such fans of traditional animation, growing up that way. Being 100 years old and all that we are.
I had a question for the directors here, basically, but anybody can chime in. How did you work with the individual voice actors to make sure they represented each genre? And I would figure the voice actors were from those genres, but
yeah, for the most part, we really wanted a level of authenticity. So when we have, hard rock trolls, we cast Ozzy Osbourne. We went to the source, the king of funk. We went to George Clinton.
Yeah.
I think we were lucky in a lot of cases for having the first film. I think like Ozzy Osbourne's grandkids were fans of the movie, so he was in. And plus they loved this concept.
Yeah, was it hard? So it wasn't hard to get these people to do it.
No, everyone right, Dave, Gina, everyone that we really wanted to be in the film, they said yes. They were they were excited about it because of the first film, and then again, they really loved the concept of this movie and they wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's
Jamie
a lot
Dornan
in
actually is a great saxophone player, so he literally represents smooth jazz.
Does he play saxophone?
Who did the jazz stuff?
Oh, you mean the music or the character?
The actual, as he's playing the sexy jazz tune? Who was playing that? What musician do you know?
That's it did. I don't know. Did Teddy play that stuff? Our composer came up with that original smooth jazz song. It's one of the first songs he wrote for the movie. He was so excited. Yeah. I don't think he actually played the saxophone. Do you know, Gina, who played that?
I'm not sure who played it, but yeah, Teddy wrote it. Teddy Shapiro. Yeah. You guys were going to write lyrics to that at one point, I remember.
I know. Dave and I were going to write lyrics to the song and put it on the album, but
yeah, call it Santa Barbara.
Yeah, I just don't think it wouldn't have been pure. We want authenticity. It wouldn't have been pure smooth jazz if we added lyrics. I don't think that would be kosher.
Well, I have another question about choreography. It was there's a lot of choreography. There's almost as much dancing as there's almost dancing all the way through it. And I know that dancing is one of the hardest things to animate well. Did you have a choreographer?
Yes. We hired the choreographer that Justin Timberlake uses a lot. His name is Marty Koldeka and AJ Harpold. And they had dancers cast in all the different parts. And dancers we've been working with the same people since Trolls 1. And they actually choreographed and they danced, and we didn't do motion capture with them. We just used their dance moves as reference because also because our characters aren't human, proportioned. So we just, we take we take from it what we can, right, and embellish it.
Yeah, it's true collaboration between the animators and the choreographers. Really beautiful one.
Yeah, it worked great.
Dave does his own choreography in the movie. If you
that's true. There's some legs in the movie.
Those are Dave's, right?
I know. That's too bad, Dave. But anyway, tell me all about how that happened, David.
Well, the scene was initially boarded by an incredibly inventive artist, JC. I can't remember his last name. Yes, and he is so incredibly imaginative and inventive, and he created this, smooth jazz sequence, dream sequence, and he had drawn a waiter, like a human waiter in his board, and we were all hanging out, talking about the design approach to this, and I just, if there's one thing I put my fist down, I said, no, there has to be human legs.
And your own.
My only contribution to the film. And but the thing is, I never expected I would be the legs. I was just demanding a set of legs. And then it turns out that I'm the cheapest legs around, and I got hired.
We also determined you had the best legs on the show.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you actually have a trial and people had to show their calves and things to make sure they
No,
That's
the
not allowed
world's
anymore.
different now, so HR would forbid that.
Dave, I was wondering if you changed up your gym routine for that. Like, were you like, working out day and night to get in the shape you wanted to be?
I just did like 20 squats before the shoot, and it was great.
and a spray tan too. You had a spray tan.
Yes. Yes, we had some people. It wasn't spray on, it was paint on, and it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's a very good design element in the show, don't you think, Kendall? It's really very lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that was all Walt and Dave, and they wanted the cheapest green screen, same with the tiger, like that's all Adobe stock, just all stuck together with a green outline, and it's just as cheesy and cheap as we can make it. That's what's in the movie.
And you know what? I'd be proud of it. I'd own that.
No, totally.
And who knew that tigers would be so topical these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So in story, because there's so much. I mean, it's a very simple plot, and there's a lot of plot because they all have to go different places and so forth. In storyboarding this, was the process any different than, say, the first one, which seemed to be there was less characters, there was less personalities to deal with? Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the first one was definitely a much simpler and more linear kind of story. We sort of had two locations. You were either in Troll Village or you were in Bergen Town. And so once we kind of had an idea of what those looked like, it was pretty easy to kind of just dive in and board what needed to be boarded. But I think this movie, there was a lot more, thankfully, a lot more collaboration between, I think, the story team and the art team. Kendall is great at including us. And we actually would have meetings every week, I think, and just say, hey, where's story at right now? What are you guys thinking? And what is the art team thinking? Like, let's see what you guys are putting together. And they would have all these amazing look boards. And so we would go back and forth throughout the progress of the story. And I think it really was figuring it out a little bit day by day as to what each new place would look like and how much time are we spending there and what is the story purpose of being in that location. I remember an early version of Country Western Town was actually started out, the whole song portion was inside of like a little dive bar that I think Kendall had designed to be inside of a cactus. And it was sort of this like, you're just walking into this old dive bar and someone, in this case, Delta Dawn, was on stage singing a song, and then it moved from there into like an old fashioned diner where she's serving them pie. And so our boards, were indicative of that the first time around. And then we started to think, oh, well, maybe we should like open it up and have the crowd singing in the whole town. And it's kind of a day in the life of. So then we kind of go back in and we rework that whole scene entirely. And then Kendall has to redesign the whole town to based on the story needs. So there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of figuring things out and kind of like exploration, I think, which was a lot of fun and definitely challenging.
Well, this brings up another question from one of our members, from Ross. Ross was talking about, he asked if any songs didn't make the film, but I'm wondering if any, what from all of you didn't make the movie, the big thing that dropped out for you, if anything, or was it all smooth sailing all the way through?
If you don't mind, I'd like to start with one thing I missed, which was a scene in which Penny Whistle was a security guard, and she was in this little security booth. One of our story artists, Colin Jack, boarded this idea where when rock and roll comes in, she's working the security booth and she just decides to go down and take her break. So she like walks down these stairs and she's trying to feed money into a vending machine, and that's when the rock trolls come in. And she finally comes back up with her little bag of chips and sees them all leaving and the town's destroyed. And that's a pretty fun little gag moment and some fun character for Penny Whistle.
So it happens while she's getting her snack, right?
Yeah, she's a bad security.
Her union break.
Yeah.
There's a handful of scenes like that didn't really help the narrative move forward. And that's when we pulled them out. But I think they're going to be available on the home video version of the film. There's a
they were animated? Did they get as far as being animated, or just?
No, we try. I don't think so, right, Gina? We try to be very economic, and that's what's the great about doing an animatic and screening rough boards and watching it and the screen with the crew. It's you get a sense of, oh, this isn't working. It's not moving the movie forward before you go into animation. So I think there was like just maybe one scene that was animated partially, and it was very, very short that didn't move forward in the film. I think only one. I think.
That's why storyboards were invented all those years ago, so you wouldn't animate stuff you didn't need. So occasionally, I've been on shows where people have forgotten that, but
that's true.
So that's pretty good. So any other sequences that didn't make it that you want to talk about?
There was one joke that I missed, but it was Branch had swallowed some gum and he farted and a bubble came out of his back pants.
Classy cinema.
Well, there's some glitter farts in there, right?
I think we actually set a goal for ourselves. No glitter farts this film, like real highbrow.
Yeah.
There was also that whole scene where Cloud Guy shows up and meets Janet, right? For his soon-to-be wife and kids, and the whole, like his whole life plays out in the sky.
Yeah, well, we end up keeping a portion of that and putting it in the main on ends. It's like
I noticed that actually, that there's this cloud. The clouds there's another cloud. Yeah. And and I said, oh, okay. But I didn't know. I said, oh, I missed something when I was watching the movie. There must have been a sequence.
No, there's a whole kind of courtship, and children are born all on the main on ends, on the credits.
Let me, I wanted to ask a question because you guys were all in the thick of this. This was supposed to go theatrical on a certain day, because Asifa had actually planned a screening, when it was coming out, that we were going to, DreamWorks was four-walling a theater and was going to do the whole thing we normally do. This would have been live. We would have been sitting in chairs doing this. But then it went away and things happened. So does anybody want to address what happened in any way?
There's this thing called COVID-19.
How did you all feel when this all of a sudden was a reality?
I think we were, everyone can say how they feel, but in general, we had this sense of, we felt kind of honored to be able to share the movie with everyone. I have young kids here with me, and I know how it feels, to be, when we were all in lockdown, to be all together. And really, we thought, wow, we felt honored that we'd be able to share all this amazing work that everybody did. And the movie is scientifically engineered to make you feel better, with the music and the colors and the production design and the jokes. So we were honored to be able to make people feel good for 82 minutes. I think that was our initial reaction, because it was so right at the beginning of the quarantine and what happened. I don't know how you guys felt, but that's how I felt. Be able to share it with so many people was great.
Yeah, it was important, I think, to get it out to people at that time. There are two things, though. One is like a concert. So people were not really able to experience that.
Oh, we lost.
The fuzzy immersion is a little bit harder to grasp on your TV. Mm-hmm. But we were, deep into our release plans, and there was kind of no going back. It was, we needed to get it out there.
Yeah, well, and you did. You guys have any feelings about it? Haven't spoken about it?
I was going to say real quick, one of the things that really stood out to me is, usually when these movies come out, you hear about people going to the theaters and seeing it. You see the box office numbers. You kind of get a sense of like how many people went out of their homes and bought tickets and enjoyed it. And you kind of hear the word of mouth from it one way or another. But to me, one of the most interesting things about this version of releasing the movie, and I'm also thankful that we were able to do it this way, is that people were literally posting on their like Instagram stories, watching it with their kids. So you were like kind of experiencing them experiencing it in a different way than we have before. And I found that to be really cool to really see them reacting and being excited about it in sort of a different way than usual.
David, anything?
I'm like everyone else. I do feel honored that we were able to share our hard work and our hard comedy and hard love with everyone in any way that we could. I think we would have been actually sad, or I would have been sad if we decided to postpone it for another 8 months or whatever when theaters opened up. I think we were all, by the time we were done mixing this in February or whatever, we were like, get it out now. And, I think I'm so thankful that this was the approach, because if we were sitting on it right now and waiting for it to come out in December or 2021 or whatever, I think we'd be sad.
And we wouldn't be talking to you right now.
No, you wouldn't. And, you know, I was watching it thinking, you know, it's great in a theater when you see a lot of kids and they can't stop moving. And this movie did. But then I had a memory in my head of, or a vision of all these homes all over with kids in the living room going crazy, you know, dancing with their folks. And I think, you know, to make a historical point, when Dumbo came out, which is a long time ago, it came out the same week that Pearl Harbor happened. And it was a hit. And it was a hit because it was what people needed at the time. I think maybe this one was too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, there's a lot of detail visually in this movie, and so there's part of me that was like, oh, I wish people could like really immerse and see that detail on a big screen. But I think you're absolutely right. It is the absolutely right movie for this moment in time with all these families at home. I mean, kind of nothing better.
Yeah, I think it,
Yeah.
and that underlying message, the diversity message, doesn't hurt.
Absolutely.
It's about time for me to wrap this up. I did want to, Dallas Garcia wrote, first of all, my family and I absolutely love the movie and all the new characters. Great job to everyone in expanding the universe. That was pretty nice and a good way to end it. I hope you guys had a good time doing this.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
And congratulations, too. It's a great movie.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks,
Frank.
Frank.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Take it easy.
You too. Stay safe and well.
Thanks for watching.
Talk to y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.